Setup checklist. There we go. Live.
All right. Hey, welcome everybody. We're back for another week of governance. We do this every week, and I hope to continue this for a very long time. I'm always interested in everything that's going on in EOS governance and in just in the crypto ecosystem as well. So really have a special guest here, Thomas Cox. It's always
I can't be that special. I'm on so often.
Our regular special guest. So.
And a big fan of yours.
No, thanks for that. But yeah, no, I'm always happy to have kind of all your insights, all your kind of just historical references, everything, like so much to read in this, and all the insights. So it's great to have you, Thomas. And
great.
And yeah, I just saw the Telegram chat just this afternoon. Actually, I wasn't checking, and then I saw, wow, this is great. Great news about the EOS Alliance. So really happy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so exciting. So folks who aren't aware, EOS Alliance has entered into the opening stages of an agreement with EOS New York and the operations and launch team from EOS Stack called was it Dakoko?
Okay. Yeah.
They have a company set up to provide DAC operation services. It's very cool. And the two of them are working through the whole statement of work process to get the board approval to spend money to do all the work to set up, take an organization that exists and turn it into a DAC on the EOS mainnet. And cannot be anyone better to do that than the EOS Stack launch team, because they just did it with EOS Stack. Wow, super cool. So it might be useful to let folks know kind of where we're starting from, because right now, almost 7 months in, we're 2 days shy of the 7-month anniversary of EOS Alliance. July 23rd is when it was announced in Shanghai. Yes, I was in Shanghai for that. And I was asked, like, would you be willing to be the executive director? And I said, I guess, who else do you have? And apparently they didn't have anybody else. So I think it was as much my notoriety or my visibility, some might say my credibility, although I might question that, but something about me made me attractive as a candidate, and did my best to run a good operation for 7 months and set it up for future success. One of the challenges, of course, I faced is I worked full-time for StrongBlock and then half-time for the Alliance, which took some explaining to my wife. It's like, and StrongBlock's a startup. Yes, honey. And the Alliance is kind of a startup too. Yeah, baby. So when am I going to see you? I said, well, I'll work from home. You'll see me for some meals. But the good news is that in my case, the overlap was so large, because what I do for StrongBlock is to focus on governance issues, and what the Alliance has done for the first several months, although of course it's broadening now, is to look at EOS mainnet governance questions and try to explain governance issues and conduct dialogue about governance, and on and on and on. So I was doing basically a lot of the same work for two masters, and that made it at least feasible to do. And it's good that we now have this very, very talented team lined up to help steer the ship in this new direction. And they'll have more announcements, I'm sure, and more guidance on what it's going to look like. But I was just so delighted with the board that they responded to this opportunity, because they knew I was going. They knew I was part-time. They knew I was temporary. I had to tell them, it was pretty clear before January that at some point I run out of gas, and we need to replace me with somebody full-time, preferably somebody who's run like a trade association before, which I have not done, and who knows something about, of course, the EOS universe. And so there's this transition coming anyway, and to take that opportunity and say, let's turn ourselves into a DAC. It's like, what? So that was brilliant. And not a lot of boards would embrace that kind of risk, but it shows a commitment to to the community and to the chain, it's the ultimate eating your own dog food, I think. To say, yep, EOS, and just because we're currently presuming, I think it's probably accurate, that the EOS mainnet will be the place where the DAC will happen to run, but that doesn't make the alliance mainnet only by any stretch of the imagination. The early indications that I've seen are, and I can't speak, what the final plan will look like or what the final implementation will look like, but the early indications are that anybody, anywhere can either purchase a membership or even earn one through volunteerism, whatever, and that your membership gives you voting rights in the EOS Alliance. And it would be like an annual thing, and you'd re-up. Probably a higher fee for organizations, corporations, I imagine. Very much like a chamber of commerce or any other kind of trade association, but a DAC. So not like them in that regard. But it's gonna answer a lot of the same challenges, and it'll help create that central focal point. Like, how do you have a coherent, decentralized community? And the answer has to be you have multiple focal points that this group can coalesce around while maintaining their independence. So if you look at like schools of fish or flocks of birds, the swift in particular is one of my favorites, because you see a bunch of a swift flock and it looks like this intelligent fluid in the sky, and you'd swear that the flock has a mind, that it's one thing because it moves like one thing, but then they split apart and eat and mate and do all their individual stuff. You're like, oh, they're just a bunch of individuals, but boy, are they coordinated. And there's no central authority in a flock of birds, at least not that we've ever found, any more than there will be with the EOS mainnet or the rest of the EOS network. Ono, Warbly, Telos, Boss Chain. I'm losing track of all of the chains now, which is a good sign, right? Anyway, before I say anything else, I'd love to say hi to the folks who are online and see what their thoughts and observations are. I see Bebopalula. Awesome to see Bebop. There's Max.
Go Max.
Is that Diaran? I'll never pronounce his name right. Diaran. Stefan, Jeff Flowers, Pad, of course, Pad, and Justin Buck, who does so much wonderful work for the Syncronize project.
Yeah, how's it going, guys? Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free.
Or observations like, get a proper haircut, or what's wrong with the clutter in your office. Anything's fair game as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
if you'd like to say something nice about my service, this would be a very good opportunity, because it's one day after I've left, and next week no one's going to care.
Yeah, no, thanks for like
fishing there.
Yeah, thanks for everything that you did with the Alliance. I think it's set up well for the kind of this, this.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. One thing I'll mention, and again, if folks have questions, please just type them in. We've not really yet had a chance to publicize or broadly disseminate the working group system. And Justin Buck, who wants to know where my goatee is, there's conservation of goatee happening. Somebody else has grown one when I shaved. Yeah, no, the wife said that she was enjoying kissing me less because as I age, my beard was getting bristlier and less soft and supple and more manly and wire brush like. And I thought, goatee, kiss wife. This is not, there's no contest there. So I shaved that day, and she's like, I thought you liked the goatee. I said, yeah, and I love you. So this is not, she's, I wish I'd said something sooner. I said, yeah, me too. Sorry, back to the working group. So we've got this thing, and Justin Buck being here is great because he led one of the early working groups. And what a working group is a cluster of people who get a charter from the Alliance saying, here's what we want to do. And then the Alliance, having chartered them, gives them translation services, helps them run meetings if they want that, helps them host meetings with a Zoom account if they want that, posts their meeting minutes, translates things into other languages, invites them onto the Alliance calls that happen in Korea and China every week, tweet about them, and so forth. And the structure of the work group is you just say, here's the problem we're working on and how it relates to the EOS community. And you put a little scope around it and like what you're trying to accomplish or what you're struggling with or working on. And as long as you remain open to the EOS community and don't, discriminate who you let in, you can still pick and choose. Like if someone's disruptive, you can omit them. Or if you're heading for like a decentralized exchange and they're like championing a centralized structure, they're like, that's not compatible with our charter. I'm sorry, go away. That's totally legit. You can leave those people out. But otherwise, you have to be open to maintain your charter. And you have to meet periodically and let people know what you're doing. And our plan is to have a list of all the working groups, just like you do with IEEE or the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, and just run this as a grassroots operation where anytime anybody wants to work on a thing, we'll say, hey, would you like to charter? And we'll help you beat the drum and get attention and coordinate and so forth. And now that I'm not ED anymore, I've offered the digital goods group, if they'd like my help with some of the standards related stuff like meeting minutes and all that crap that is mandatory if you're going to do a proper standard, but no one seems to love. Regular meetings scheduled, announced in advance, meeting minutes published the same day the meeting's over, meeting minutes translated into other languages, regular outreach to expand the group, spinning off subgroups in a coherent way. There's a lot of administrative detail management that's necessary for a good working group, and the Alliance helps with a lot of that. So now that I'm just a volunteer, I get to offer to help with that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, and then I guess in terms of the, a lot of the processes probably are going to remain. To
the extent that if we have good processes, we'll keep them. If not, I'm sure they'll evolve them or replace them. But yeah, we've got, I think, a very good set of Alliance sort of standard weekly rhythm behaviors of noticing what's happening in the community. There's a slight echo on Thomas's end. What's up with that? I'm going to switch microphones.
Yeah, I hear you okay.
I hear the echo. I think it's actually on Jun's end. I think he needs to mute himself.
Okay, maybe I'll mute myself then. Maybe that's I'll do that.
222 testing.
Same, better, worse? Better. Okay. Of course, we changed two things. So we changed both the microphone and the mute status. So there's no way to know. It's Rohan. Rohan made it. Hey, Rohan. So what do folks want to know about, hear about? Shah from Blocksmith is in the house. Excellent. What are questions, challenges people are anticipating from the DACification process, or questions about the history of the Alliance up to now?
Thomas, there is a question at the Ask a Question section.
Someone actually used the interface properly. Max asks, Thomas, do you see a way for existing public institutions to be able to incorporate DAC tools, or even a way to fully migrate over? Seems like it would be difficult, but very adventurous. Yes, and not only is it doable and a challenge, I think there's actually already non-blockchain tools available to us. And give me just a second. I will pull up something and share it on screen. I lost Jun just now. Maybe he turned his camera off. So there's some of you are familiar with something called holacracy, and let's see. I don't know how to. I've got the question here. I don't know how to mark that it's answered. So weird. I'll have to get Jun to mark the question as answered. So let me screen share application window. Here we go. So what you see here is the splash page for something called Sociocracy. And hopefully, is that visible?
I don't see it, Thomas. You're trying to screen share?
Again. Yeah. Oh, I hit cancel because cancel is blue and share is white. It's like, that's bizarre. Yeah, so Sociocracy 3.0, it's from sociocracy30.org. And when you dive in there, you'll see that they've got some pretty solid principles of, empiricism and consent and effectiveness, continuous improvement. And what they offer, what they claim, is that you can take any existing institution, organization, club, what have you, and begin to introduce sociocracy practices. And the more of them you introduce, the more, I'll use the word decentralized. I'm not use that word, but that's in fact what happens. You get more and more autonomous teams and autonomous individuals. And sociocracy is a generic form of holacracy. Holacracy is a brand named specific implementation of sociocracy. And so the holacracy model is like all or nothing, and here's the one true way to do it. And sociocracy is much more of a pick and choose sort of an approach. What they both do is define the work group as an autonomous unit that gets empowered by the group that contains it. And once they are handed power, it's theirs to do what they want to do. And as long as they maintain their agreements with people around them, they're free to accomplish their mission any way they want to within the boundaries set. And if that sounds familiar to folks who've looked at the Alliance closely, the Alliance back in December adopted something I'd been pushing for quite a while called the Carver model, the Carver governance model. And Carver policy governance is specifically a well-established, multi-decade-old approach to dividing the power between a board and staff in a way that looks exactly like sociocracy. It's high accountability, but high autonomy. And so when you think about modular autonomous groups that scales up, that involves consent and transparency, it all sounds like blockchain to me. But the sociocracy, the holacracy people haven't done anything in blockchain yet, right? And the DAC people often haven't even heard of sociocracy. So we've got a whole massive body of knowledge out there and practitioners who would love to come and help us, make our DACs and our DAOs cool and functional. And we need to strike up a conversation with them. Now, I had the good fortune to run into somebody here in Oregon, where I live, named Stephanie Fleming. And as we were getting this working group process set up, which I'd mentioned, I'll bring the working group thing up here in just a second. Pull that up. She went around to the existing groups, the WPS, the referendum team, the ballot crafters, talked to Justin Buck and the Syncronize group, and extracted from them a whole series of lessons learned on how to run a successful group. And we'll be turning that into a how-to guide. And so here you've got the working group page on the Alliance. And so if you wanted to start up a working group, what will you do and how will you do it? And here's a sample charter. And here's some active groups like the Korean EOS users, who are insanely effective. They're a wildly productive group. The Chinese EOS users, the Commons Development Fund, Syncronize. There's a dispute resolution group, and so forth. The referendum group never got a charter from the Alliance, but the Alliance supported them as much as we could, although they honestly were so awesome they didn't need a ton of support. And coding best practices, I think, is coming, and maybe digital goods is coming. And so I see a huge opportunity here for the working groups to use sociocracy practices, for DACs and DAOs to read about and implement sociocracy, for existing sociocracy folks out in the world, of which there are many, many tens of thousands of people very fond of that approach and championing it, to get introduced to blockchain. When I brought in Stephanie to do this study and learn the lessons and share them, she'd never heard of blockchain in her life. She was deep into the whole sociocracy, autonomous, decentralized organization world. And she was just in love. So I'm hoping that Stephanie's going to stick around for the long term. We got to find things for her to do, either as a volunteer or paid person, to keep her in the loop. So the takeaway I want to ask people to embrace, I'll turn off my camera now, or my screen share, is number one, think about what you're already doing that would fit into a working group model, which would then get some pretty good support from the Alliance. And also think about, what are the groups that you're engaged in that might make use of some better human factor practices? Because what Sociocracy is a collection of practices that work well with humans as we are today, egotistical and apt to get defensive and, kind of narrow-minded. And sometimes we think black and white. And so you need practices that help you overcome the natural limitations of the human animal. And I think Sociocracy does a great job of that. And because it pre-exists blockchain, because it's already well established and well documented, you're not trying to reinvent anything, right? You're taking advantage of somebody else's lifetimes at work. And I'm a big fan of that. It's like, I wouldn't rewrite my own, coding libraries if I can just use somebody else's. Why would you do that? Anyway, that's my rant. That's my rant on working groups.
Yeah, that's great. Great to see the working groups. Also, this Sociocracy framework, I guess the principles maybe, or the 7. Was it 7?
The 7 principles. I'll stick that in chat real quick.
Yeah, and it is. I saw a couple of them that were just perfect for blockchain. It was consensus and accountability. That's all. That's net inherent in blockchain.
Transparency's in there. Yeah, transparency. Gotta love that.
Transparent. Yeah. So that's fantastic. And then the other one, the one thing I did notice there, I think everything. I think I could kind of get a good sense of what the principle is. But then equivalence was interesting. I saw that. I was trying to figure out what that kind of.
Yeah. So, but what they mean by equivalence is that when people are affected by a decision, involve them in the decision. That the more you're impacted by a decision, the more you should have some sort of say or voice or influence.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So that's that. Okay. Great. Yeah. And this is all like all of it, transparency, accountability, continuous improvement, the idea of iterating, empiricism, where we're experimenting with a lot of new ideas, and so this is great. Yeah, effectiveness, of course. That's a great framework, I think, to use just in general. So I like that a lot. And then let me see, any other questions? Working groups. I know Justin is kind of hard at work with Syncronize, and they just have a constitution that they, I think, released not too long ago.
Yeah, I'd actually love to pop off and get Justin on. He can give us an update on how things are going with Syncronize. If he hasn't run away at the mention of it.
And we could get up to 4 people, so you could stay on, Thomas. But if Justin wants to get on,
come on, Justin. Everybody give Justin a hand. Yeah, Justin. Type in, do it, Justin, do it.
Yeah. So if Justin wants, I'll invite him in just in case, and he can jump on from his phone. It might be okay. We'll see. Let's see. There's an app, but so I think you do need to download the app if it's just
for Crowdcast.
Yeah, for Crowdcast. So
I think I once joined just on the browser on my phone.
Oh yeah.
Although I don't think I did any screen sharing, but.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Justin, unfortunately.
Yeah, other questions folks have, type them in.
So it's exciting. He says, give me a minute. So what else do you see are the challenges? Going forward. Let's say the organizational structure of the DAO is fantastic, but again, just as an organization, what do you see kind of where the focus has to be, I guess, under this DAO? And I don't know if it's going to be able to help improve that with the DAO structure or not, or just challenges in general, I guess.
Yeah, of course, I can't speak to how things will actually turn out, and I think we can anticipate with some confidence what classes of problems we'll likely see. And that'll include things like how often do you elect people for what terms? Right now we've got sort of what looked to me like continuous elections on EOS DAC. Will they do that as well? How many delegates will there be? 5, 7, 9, 23? Sometimes those are relatively arbitrary seeming choices, but the difference can make, well, the difference can make a difference, right? You know, a group of 23, it's hard to get intimate, but you have enough people you can spin up subcommittees if that's how you guys get your work done. Do they intend to do it as a working board where those delegates are essentially doing the work of the organization, or are they just a board that sets policy? Incompatible device for Justin. So yeah, it's pretty classic set of decisions that have to be made when you want to set up some kind of a governance structure of, you know, people to represent the collective, and how often are they in? What accountability do they have? What kinds of written, unwritten rules end up getting formulated and followed? Are the voters active and activist? Do the voters have some sort of clear shared understanding of how things ought to be run? Because there's, you know, if you have 40% of the voters are casting votes in favor of very sort of arm's length, empower the staff kind of management, and you got 40% of the voters, you really think the board should be hands-on and doing things, they'll elect different people, they'll expect them to do different things, and that board will have a hard time coming together because the community's not together. And at some point, if they want to be effective as a board, they're going to have to decide for themselves how they're going to make peace and make things run, and then push back on the community and say, look, some of you guys want this and some want that. We can't do both. So we're going to do this one, and here's why, and you guys need to be okay with that. And if you're not, you got to vote us out. But if you've got a divided community, you'll have a divided board. If you have a divided board, you can have real struggles. So those are some of the challenges you can reasonably anticipate seeing. And that's classic human being stuff, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to take the humans out of this.
Yeah. So, there's another question that popped up from Max down below.
Minimum recurring member action and engagement. So recurring is a great word, by the way, Max. So Max's question, I'll read it again. What's the minimal reoccurring amount of member action / engagement that's ideal for a successful DAC or DAO? And I would claim that it probably has something to do with the scale. Good structures are fractal in their design. That if you've got a large membership with a board that's over the whole, you really want to chop that membership up into subgroups and push a lot of power down into subcommittees and working groups and IEEE interest groups, and make people who are interested in a thing work on the thing, and not try to shove it all through, Washington or Moscow or some Paris or some, don't centralize, folks. And the amount of activism and the quality and the type of engagement is going to change dramatically based on just the sheer scope. How many dollars are in play and how many people's opinions are involved. The smaller and more local, the better. Oh, Justin downloaded the app. Yes. But is Justin using the app right now to view this? That's my question.
Oh, it seems like it's working. So, yeah, that's I like that idea. Oops.
Justin.
I made it.
Lots of echo.
There is.
A little bit.
Not much I can do about it.
Unless you have a headset.
I don't.
So I won't talk, and you give us the update.
Okay, and then I can mute after that. So just a quick update on what Thomas was talking about with the Syncronize working group. More or less what happened with that was I wanted to follow what was going on in the referendum space. I am highly active in the space because I love the power of the people that DPAWS brings. And as a token holder, you get to vote and you get to influence what happens in this community. And One thing I saw was, Thomas and the Alliance spent a lot of time and a lot of calls building ideas around how to make a better governing model or constitution, if you will, than what we had with the interim. And then in the meantime, we saw V2 from Block 1 come, and then we saw the EUA written by EOS New York come, and we kind of just still saw that we weren't producing a final document from the Alliance team of hundreds, if not thousands of people. And my idea was, well, maybe it's just too big of a group. Maybe we should be more unilateral and create a quorum of the most highly active members and see if we can't get something done the way that the EUA and V2 got done so that we can put it up to referendum to go against those. So the EUA already went up to referendum, unfortunately, so we didn't get it put it side by side with the EOS Community Constitution. But that constitution has been published on Medium, and it will be going to referendum soon. They are just figuring out the last little tweaks they want to do with the referendum language, more or less. But it's been really cool to see the self-organization. I mean, I got the group together because I saw the hole that I thought we needed to fill. But really, it is just amazing to see how much the community wants to build as a team when they see a common purpose. And that's it. And I think that once that project goes to referendum, the Syncronize working group will be wrapping up, and hopefully it will have good data points for the next working groups going forward on how to be successful as well.
Hey, thanks a lot. So maybe you can mute Justin. Sorry about that. All right. Yeah, no, Justin, that's fantastic. A great kind of background about the whole process, and coming to the kind of the final product here with the Constitution that will be officially up for vote very soon, it seems. And there is a Medium article. If you do have that, you can go ahead and link to that, and we'll share it on the video. Yeah, and then a great learning about the whole process. Hopefully, you can write a blog about just the whole process. How you got you were you and the EOS Alliance was kind of helping to kind of coordinate all the different groups in all the different countries. I know Russia, we had Europe, you had Korea, just in China, and so many different people from all around the world. And I think that's kind of another big piece of blockchains in general, like how global it is. And the EOS Alliance, one of the main objectives was to have everybody globally coordinate. So I don't know if Thomas wants to speak to that as well, because I'm always curious, like maybe the learnings about that as well, but just the process, the working group. And I think Justin hopped off here. But
say more about that question. I'm not sure I was tracking.
Yeah, just the challenges of getting a global community together, and I think Syncronize was a great model of that on how to do that.
There's no question that we really struggled to get complex ideas across language barriers. That just the word Constitution either struck people as weird or got translated into a word that in their language referenced some totally discredited document from the prior, regime of their political system. It's like, you don't want that. Or it came back as charter, or it came back as agreement, or, nuances that in English then start to, like, the meaning starts to drift off, and you wonder what on earth they thought we said. So yeah, that's a real challenge. And then, most people, I certainly include myself, tend to default when you ask, well, what should a governance structure look like? They tend to default with whatever they grew up with. It's like, well, we should have voting and representatives, right? Because that's what we do, or what my country does, or my last country did, or it's what we did in school. And I don't know that that's right, ideal. liquid democracy, you don't see people really excited by it, largely because we've never done it. And even the most progressive human being gets really small c conservative when it comes to how things are going to run. They really like what they're used to and what they're familiar with and what they're comfortable with. So, if you're a proponent of liquid democracy, I think your best hope is to get into grade schools and high schools and start persuading political science classes to run themselves with liquid democracy for a month, or give a stipend to, clubs that use liquid democracy, or I don't know if that even makes sense, but find ways to push the ideas into the earliest experiences of people so that later on they're like, oh, liquid democracy. Oh, we did that in high school. Yeah, I know that. As opposed to liquid what? Do I buy a bottle of liquid democracy and add it to my laundry? What are you talking about? It's probably up there on a shelf next to the gender fluid. Like, what? People are hopeless. And when people get confused, they revert to what they're familiar with, or they just say no and tune out, or they vote no. And so, it was, and at the same time, if you're not anxious for a particular outcome and you're just sort of trying to show up to see I wonder what's going to happen, it's tremendously interesting to, go onto a Chinese language call, Mandarin call, and everything goes at half speed because everything's translated. You say your thing and you sit there silently while someone translates you, hopefully accurately. And then someone asks a question, which has to be translated. And then they're all waiting for you to answer and then waiting for the translation. So that's fun. I recommend getting the questions in advance for that reason, so you can get them translated in both directions. The commonalities, though, were that no matter what language group, no matter what time zone, no matter what country, the EOS user base, the EOS community is really committed to decentralization. They're really committed to empowering individuals and small groups. They're really committed to a future that I think upends the overly centralized status quo that we've got today, where Facebook, Google, Amazon kind of own everything and everyone, and you get big governments that are much more interested in their power base than in you or me. And what hope do we have against that? Well, actually, there's some really good hope against that. I want to tell you a story about this. This is exciting to me personally. There's a book on organizational design called Reinventing Organizations. It's by a guy named Frederick Laloux, Lalous. And I've probably mentioned it before. I tend to talk about it periodically. And he used Ken Wilber's integral theory to analyze organizations. And he suggested that organizations exist on a continuum, or actually through layers of evolution, where the lowest layer of organization is mostly lowest. It is characterized as being red. It's all color coded. And a red organization is run on fear. And so that's your tribal militia. It's your street gang. It's the mafia. It's a very resilient structure. Because if you've got, a tribal militia or a street gang, and there's somebody whacks the top 10, the leader and his top lieutenants, there's chaos for a few weeks, and then there's new leadership. And the whole thing carries on as before. It's very grassroots. You can't kill those organizations off. Now, they can't plan for the future, and they're always afraid of each other, and it's red is fear. The whole thing's held together by fear. Right? Why do you pay protection money? Because you're afraid not to. And so it's not a great structure, but it might be marginally better than, say, living on the street and not being in the gang, which if that's the only other alternative, then you probably want to be in the gang, I guess. Not that I want to advocate for that. So what do you do if red isn't doing it for you? What else is there? Well, if you take the red organization and transcend it, you get into amber, and amber organizations are about order and structure. And you don't need to use fear because you're going to use position. And then you get feudalism and serfdom and, the ability to dig canals and build pyramids and plan for the future, which you couldn't do in red. It's slightly better because you're not living in perpetual fear of being stabbed in the back, but now you're locked in. If you're the son of a blacksmith, you're going to grow up and be a blacksmith. doesn't matter if you're a gifted poet in your heart. You're going to be writing poetry in your head while you're putting shoes on horses. But again, hey, it's not red, right? So amber is very ordered and structured like the Catholic Church, hierarchical and fixed in place, and unionized schools, typically that way. So, okay, what if we would like something with a little more mobility and people's abilities could be recognized? Well, to get above amber, you go into the next level called orange. Orange is meritocracy. It's giving people roles based on what they're good at. It's not just, you could be born in a dirt floored hut in India, and if you've got the talent and the breaks, you can become CEO of Coca-Cola, or not. And so this gives much better use of human capital. So it competes the hell out of amber, which competes the hell out of red, because red can't even plan for the future. But notice red organizations don't go away. They're still out there. Amber organizations do still exist, just that orange organizations are better at certain things. But orange organizations, these become transnational corporations, and they just care about money. And they are soulless. And they'll happily destroy the planet in search of an extra buck, right? So what if you're like, I think I want to transcend orange. I think I've got all the transnational corporation I want. I would like, what's the next level, please? And in Lulu's formulation, the next level is green. And green is about community. It's about multiple stakeholders, not just shareholders. It's about, having a sustainable organization that you want to live with and want to work for, and that has a purpose other than money. What are the things that you value enough that you turn down money to get the other thing? And REI is like that. Ben & Jerry's arguably like that. There's a number of fairly successful organizations that run this way. The downside of green is they tend to be very obsessed with consensus. They tend not to scale up. They tend to get hijacked by the naysayers, because if one person disagrees, we can't do it. Everyone has to agree. Excessive consensus is the downside of green, which takes us to the next level, which is called a color called teal, which is like half green and half blue. And so the teal level is the sociocracy level. It's the level where you break the organization apart into work groups that are autonomous. And yes, there are examples. And if you read Frederick Laloux's book, he talks about over a dozen examples of real world organizations running today. And this is what excites me about decentralization. I'll just pick one example. It's Buurtzorg, Buurtzorg. Buurtzorg is a visiting nurses organization based in the Netherlands. And they compete head to head against amber and orange and green organizations who are all doing this visiting nurse service. And the visiting nurse industry is rife with high turnover, low morale, high costs, low margins. Everybody hates it. No one's happy, except Buurtzorg. Buurtzorg competes everybody into the ground, and they have very high retention, and their staff love working there, and their clients love them. And the reason they're so effective is they are highly decentralized. They are run as a 12-person unit, and they don't take orders from headquarters, and they're not like told to, only, you used to spend 15 minutes doing this. You got to spend 12 minutes doing it now. We got to, squeeze in one more visit every day. Screw that. They don't have to do that. And they are autonomous at the 12-person unit level. And they have a headquarters that does things like payroll and certain unavoidable stuff like that, and gives them their computer infrastructure. But if you want to start a new Buurtzorg group, you go from 12 to like 18 or 19 people, and then you split it in half, and you make two organizations where there were one. And they tend to have the same nurse visiting the same handful of patients again and again for weeks, months, and years if needed. And that's what the patients love, is the same care provider again and again, which the orange organizations can't figure out how to do. And so the decentralization takes away overhead. It takes away a big fat headquarters and an overfocus on quarterly results. And it gives you an organization that can care about human factors and morale and excellence in service. And they hold themselves to very high standards. And as I say, they have a lower cost and a higher margin, and they just outcompete the snot apparently out of the traditional big multinationals. And so decentralization works better. Big surprise. The hard part is setting it up in the first place because we're not used to it. And we tend to fall back on the patterns of our youth, right? We raise our kids like we were raised. We tend to work in a new organization like we worked in the last organization. We tend to treat our new boss kind of like, we assume he's kind of like the last boss until we learn better. And so what we need to have a more human and more decentralized future, I think, and a more successful and profitable one, and one that's nicer to the planet and nicer to each other, is more and more experiences where we decentralize things as much as possible, but no further, and where we find these tools and these practices that are already working today for other people, and we copy them and we go visit them and we challenge ourselves to be more that way. And that's why, by the way, I'm so excited that the Alliance has decided to become a DAO. That's like, we will eat our own dog food in a big and mighty way. And that is awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it seems like, it is a natural technology to support these structures. And
yeah, if you're going to be decentralized anyway, why not have a highly decentralized, transparent technology that supports that?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Cool.
So how, just follow up on Bertsorg, what are the, what ties everybody together? What kind of minimum level of, I guess,
how do they maintain a culture? How do they maintain a coherence? I have a faintest idea. I need to go to the Netherlands. I need to visit them. I need to find out. But you can read Lalous' book and get quite a bit of information there. And again, it's LALOUX. It's Reinventing Organizations is the name of the book.
Reinventing orgs. We'll put that in there.
Yeah, I've got a whole mailing. I've got a whole reading list. I'll give you the link to the whole list, and you'll see it in there.
All right. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, this is great because this is really the. I think we're going to be able to experiment and use these models with this technology. It's a natural. It's natural. I think
we need to. Yeah, we need to iterate. We need to try things and try yet more things. And let's see, where's my blockchain governance readings? And I can share that with a link, which I will put into chat.
Awesome. All right, we got
So what you'll see there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books, of which Reinventing Organizations is one.
That's great. Yeah. We'll put that link on the video, and that's, I guess, Thomas's reading list, top 10
blockchain governance readings.
Yeah.
And by the way, click the heart on that list and make sure that people know you like it.
All right. Sounds good. Justin had a question on the chat window. He also has a question in the ask a question section.
Great.
The number one predictor, well, actually he has a quote. He says, the number one predictor of success for a very young startup is rate of iteration. And that's Sam Altman from Y Combinator. Okay. So it was, empiricism, continuous improvement in Sociocracy is along those lines of iteration and experimentation. And so in the startup world, it's very much like that, where, you have to kind of try different things and learn and, become more effective in the future. So, and then he has another question here about, the EOS, he says, don't want to just distract, but will there be an EOS DAO token? But I think the way, go ahead.
I think the answer is probably yes. The EOS DAC has a token that was airdropped. I think the EOS DAO token, that the Alliance governance token, is going to be one that you purchase as part of getting a membership that, you have to buy, just like if you wanted to, be a member at REI which is the sporting goods company, which is a collective, by the way, it's a cooperative, you have to buy $10 worth of merchandise or more every year, or send them money. And if you want to be a member of a co-op, you have to buy shares. And if you want to, have a say in the running of Apple computer, you've got to buy some shares of Apple. It's the same thing. So the Alliance will, I'm confident, have some sort of membership program, and the membership will almost certainly be represented by a token or some on-chain record. So yeah, this is going to be cool stuff.
Yeah, excited to see. Yeah, I think, I definitely think, token makes sense, just in general. But the specific for this case, voting rights is one of the main features of a DAC or DAO, right? That's right. Like one of the main things you need to get at first. So
yeah, and the set of rules around what things are votable on, and when and how often and to what extent. And these are non-trivial questions.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So
one other thing, there's later today, there's a meeting of the International Society for the Study of Decentralized Governance. It's a monthly thing. And I'll make sure to send you, Jun, the link to the meeting notes and the recording. So if folks are interested in that, it's going to be, this month's talk is on polycentric law, which is a system whereby multiple legal systems are all available to you. And on a case-by-case basis, you and another person can agree which legal system you're using for your interactions. And so it's choice to a new level. So,
yeah, that's exciting. And there was a link in the governance channel that I don't know if it was the polycentric law, but there was something else that you might have had a presentation on along. I don't know if it's. I was going to go back to it and actually watch that. I think it was a video link that you shared, but I didn't. I forget I'm trying to remember exactly what the link was about, but it was in the governance channel, and it was, I think, a presentation you did recently, maybe on a particular topic. But
probably.
Okay, I'm trying to remember now. I drew a blank.
Yeah, I went to South Korea recently and gave a talk on. Let's see. Here it is. No, too many different options. I'm trying to do a search on the Gov channels, links that have been shared. There's just so many, 4,000 links have been shared on the Gov channel. The most recent talk I gave was on the governance of a consortium blockchain, and the research that we've been doing at StrongBlock on what a consortium is, what's the definition of a consortium, and how does that relate to enterprise blockchains and corporate resident blockchains, and why you'd want either one of those things. Why a blockchain? Why a consortium? And the fact that there's a substantial overlap in the work required to do either. You have to, if you and 3 other organizations form a consortium to do, governance podcasts, to be a proper consortium, you guys are going to have to merge your operations at least a little bit. And you're going to have to rationalize and normalize and align your data definitions, your business processes, and your data sharing. Boy, that sounds a lot like a blockchain would be helpful, wouldn't it? But you don't have to. But, someone just has the link. There's Justin. Justin saves us. Thank you, Justin. That the work involved in setting up a blockchain for a group of companies, and the work involved in setting up a consortium legally for a bunch of companies is so overlapping, you might as well do both. And if you do one, you're doing 80% of the work of the other. So just do both anyway. And my prediction was that in future, you will not see consortia form without blockchains. There's just too much benefit from taking a little bit of extra work and getting all the benefits of blockchain. And what does that mean, and so on. There's a slide that might be entertaining. Nope, it's not available. Sorry. It's a blockchain governance slide that we're working on for my next presentation, but it's not available. I'll pick it up next time.
All right, sounds good. So yeah, we'll have you back to discuss that as well. And there's a YouTube link that we'll put up. And then also Justin has another one about polycentric law.
Yeah, it's an earlier posting by Branden Espinoza, who's also at StrongBlock and who's going to be giving this talk on polycentric law later today. So if you want to read some of his current thinking, that's a really good article on that. It's a fascinating topic, and I think we're going to see more and more of this. Because remember, you think about multiple legal systems. What if you have inter-blockchain communication? So we've got 2 or more blockchains for one transaction that might have different constitutions on these different blockchains. And so what's the ruling law? Well, it's not that. No need to panic. There's already been some smart people thinking about that. Cue the polycentric law talk. So we're heading into a very interesting. If you thought blockchain was interesting up until now, and it is, it's going to get even cooler.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, and that's a good way to end it since that's coming up tonight, right?
Coming up later today. I think we're starting that in about 2 hours is the live presentation, and we'll have the recording up within a day or so.
Okay. So yeah, excited to hear that. I see the video and yeah, I think that's kind of where we're trending with all these sister chains and side chains going on. So any last comments and any last questions from everybody in the audience? And
if you have more questions, find me in the governance channel. That's really the best place to reach me. And there's an interesting question just got posted. What if you could decentralize? Yeah, future social media is thousands of blockchains under independent governance behind a seamless user experience. And I recall that someone replied to that. I think it was Fred Krueger of EOS Links replied to that with, "That's easier said than done."
Yeah.
Like anything else worth doing, by the way. Like the Apple Mac user interface and the iPhone user interface, all easier said than done, but they were done.
Yeah.
And it was well worth doing it.
That's true.
Thank you all very much. It's been a real joy and pleasure to be the executive director of the EOS Alliance. It's great to return to my civilian status as a fellow fan and volunteer like so many of you. And thank you, Jun, for hosting this program routinely, reliably, repeatedly. And thank you for your audience as well for caring enough to tune in and make a difference.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for all your efforts at EOS Alliance, and we'll have you back, just as the regular special guest as we always have you.
The not so special guest.
So yeah,
awesome.
No, really appreciate it.
Take care. Love you all.
Yeah, sounds good. Take care, guys. Have a good one. Let me see.